Continuing on, we are still moving through the book of John, as we will be for the foreseeable future. And so the last several weeks, we are going on week 5 this week, and last week we made it through the end of chapter 1. And so just to backtrack a little bit, I'm not going to go through everything we've talked about, but just over the last weeks, we have talked about John the Baptist. So again, John the Baptist, not John the Apostle, two different guys. John the Baptist came and was brought to this world to share the good news and to make the path for the coming Messiah. And so a few weeks ago, we talked about how we are to be like John in the way that we share the gospel. So the first thing we are to be like John is to share the gospel. That is the first thing that we're called to do. As we know and understand the context of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, part of that is his final commandment, which was go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. And so John came in to do that before Jesus came, to prepare the way for him to come. So we're called to share the gospel like him. We're called to act in boldness like John the Baptist. John was bold in the way that he shared what was to come, the way that he shared who Jesus was. We are to act with boldness in our own faith and lead people directly to Christ. That was our third point, is that we are called to lead people directly to Jesus. We're not called to lead them to our own thoughts and ideas and our own legalistic mindset of whatever we believe. We are called to lead them to Jesus. And then last week we discussed, as Jesus started to call the disciples, how we were going to respond. Are we going to respond like Peter, who was dragged along and brought to Jesus kind of against his will? Are we going to be like Nathanael, who questions everything that Jesus brought and questions who Jesus is? Or are we going to be like Andrew and Philip, who not only came to Jesus, but when they came to Jesus, they brought people with them? Every time they approached Jesus, they brought more and more people with them. Andrew drug along his brother, Peter. Philip brought Nathanael to Jesus. They were dragging these people with them. If this is the God of the universe, if this is the Messiah we've been waiting on, you're coming with me. So how do we approach our faith within the context of 2024? How are we doing it? Are we being dragged along? Are we doing it with questioning? Are we doing it while bringing others with us? And so this week we're going to start chapter 2, and we come across one of the most popular stories of Jesus' ministry, and that was his first miracle. So today we're going to pick up again John chapter 2, starting in verse 1. And it tells us this. It says, "On the third day there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, 'They have no wine.'" So this is the third day, it tells us, the third day in the context of everything that has happened over the last week. 2 days after his encounter with Nathanael, and this continues the activities that have spanned the entire week. So far over the last 4 weeks, and now today in our 5th week, we have covered an entire week. So day 1 started with John the Baptist witnessing Jesus coming. And he expressed and explained that this was the Messiah. This is he who was promised to us for years and years to come. Then we have another interaction with John and Jesus, where John says, this is the Messiah. This is he who has come. This picks up in verse 29 of chapter 1. And then we have later where John the Baptist's referral of disciples to Jesus. This is who you need to follow. You're done following me, follow him. Day 4 was Andrew's introduction of his brother Peter to Jesus. He brings Peter to Jesus. This happens on day 4. Day 5 is Philip and Nathanael coming to follow Jesus. And then finally, here we are, the wedding at Cana. This is a busy week. This is I know I had a busy week this week. This was a busy week. And so as we pick back up today, we are here in the final day of the week of all of this happening. And of course, this is the first of many stories suggesting that Jesus was always welcome among those having a good time. He was always brought in. He was always there around these people Jesus didn't come to spoil a good time, but in the Jewish culture of that day, at a wedding was the best party of them all. This was the event of the village. There are several old traditions that try to discuss who this wedding might have been for. One tradition says that it was John the Apostle's wedding, and that after seeing these miracles, he left his bride. And while this is a fun story to think about, it's fairly unlikely. There are even some that believe, for some reason, that this was the wedding of Jesus himself. This is something that believers of a New Age thinking believe, and they teach within their practices. And this is against the plain meaning of this passage and contrary to all of the gospel records of Jesus' life. And so if this is something that you have thought or understood or was taught growing up, I hate to break it to you, but this was not Jesus' wedding. But we don't really know in the full context of what's going on. We really don't know whose wedding it was, but that Jesus was invited, that Mary was invited, the disciples were there, everybody was there within this group. And not only that, but everybody was there, but the wine ran out. Of course, this was a huge, major social mistake in this time. And it was something that could bring shame to the people for a very long time. The families, this would have been an incredibly shameful thing to happen. Now, we've had birthday parties and events that have ran out of cake or ran out of cookies, and we go, oh man, shucks, so sorry. But it doesn't bring shame on the family. It's not something that is then told across the entire city of, man, we went to the Boydstons and they ran out of cookies, and how dare they? But in this social context of the time, this would have been a major faux pas. This would have been a horrible situation to be in. A wedding was supposed to be this huge, eventful party, and the host to fail in providing adequate hospitality, specifically in the form of food and beverages, was a great dishonor. This was something that you should have planned for and planned way in advance and planned way more than you needed. But for some reason, they ran out. Some theologians blame it on the fact that the disciples came with Jesus, that they might not originally have been on the guest list. But as Jesus traveled with these men, they brought them in, and they believed that maybe this is what caused the wine to run out. Maybe it was the fact that this was a poorer family that thought they could just sneak by with just enough, but unfortunately couldn't. One theologian points out the fact that the wedding party running out of wine may have been a symbol of the spiritual barrenness of the first century Jews. Especially when you look at the Old Testament background that viewed wine as a sign of joy and God's blessing. This was a moment that they had gone 600 years without hearing from a prophet. And they had gone many, many more years with knowing that the Messiah was coming, but nothing had happened. And so at this point, they are running out of their spiritual fortitude. And so as the common man's spiritualness, for the lack of a better word, started to diminish, and the legalism started to build up within the culture, there was this barrenness. And so this theologian describes that them running out of this wine was to represent exactly what was happening amongst these people. And we also see here in verse 3 that when they run out of wine, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no wine. She presents this issue to him, and we don't know exactly why Mary brought this problem to her son. Maybe it was the fact that she was eager in anticipation of the day that Jesus would start to demonstrate the fact that he was the Messiah. That she was so looking forward to this moment where she knew before he was born, before he was conceived, that he was called to do exactly what he was called to do. And so she waited now at this point for 30 plus years, and nothing had happened yet. And so maybe she was just anticipating the fact that he was the Messiah and that this was coming anyway, so why not start now? When people saw that Jesus was the Messiah, it would also vindicate Mary for everything that she had gone through, who had lived under this shadow of this pregnancy before marriage and this birth that so many people questioned within her life. This was another situation that would have brought so much shame on her at this time. And so now here she is, so many years removed, and this is the moment. This is where you can vindicate both who you are and what God has done through you, but also vindicate me. We don't know exactly what her mindset was in this moment. We can assume and we can think any one of these things. But no matter what it was, she brought it to him, and he responds like this. Verse 4, and Jesus said to her mother, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." I've always read this verse and looked at it through the context of me calling my mom mother and how horrible that would have been. But in reading this week and in studying this week, I realized that this was a sign of respect. So for years and years and years, you would call your mother, mother, and he had called his mother, mother. But now here is this moment where he has been disconnected from just her as his physical, life-giving mother, and now their relationship is different. Now their relationship is that of Messiah and one who needs saved. And so just as he would address any other woman that would have brought an issue to him, Jesus addresses her as woman, an expression of polite distance as to question why she was doing this. Again, I've always looked at this as how dare he call his mother woman. My mom would have thrown hands. But here is this moment where he is showing that there is no longer this connection. It's not just a relationship that we have, but now here it is. There is this disconnect because, of course, he is God and she is woman. And at this point in his ministry, because of people's misconception about the coming Messiah, Jesus chooses not to reveal himself openly to the people of Israel. This was something that he did not want to do just yet. This was not something that he was just going to go around and just throw around and explain to everybody. This was something that he was keeping close to himself. But even then, his mother tells the servants, do whatever he tells you. Whatever it is that he tells you to do, just do it. Don't ask questions. Don't bat an eye. Do whatever he tells you. Which I think is a great reminder for us today. When we come into a relationship with Jesus Christ and we come into this very intimate setting where we can sit and go to him with our problems and we can present our problems to the Father through his Son Jesus Christ, we should have a mindset of do whatever he tells you. It's not for us to question. It's not for us to go around. It's not for us to even know why. But do whatever he tells you. And we're shown why here very quickly. Verse 6 says, now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. And Jesus said to his servants, fill the jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. Again, I love the detail that John puts into this. And to me, again, this is only detail that could have been put in from firsthand knowledge, from being there and seeing exactly what happened. This is only information that we could have got directly from the source of this happening. Jesus said to them, fill the jars with water, and they filled them to the brim. Not only did he know exactly how full that he filled them, but he knew exactly how many there were and exactly how large they were. Charles Spurgeon, he saw significance in this passage in how that we as believers, or we as those who share the gospel, as those who speak about the gospel, should speak with exactness. Let us always speak correctly, he says, sometimes almost or thereabout, will be words that will just save our truthfulness. Let us not speak positively when we do not know. And when the accuracy of a statement is necessary and we cannot give it in terms that are definite, let us give them in words like these, containing 2 or 3 foreskins apiece. We are to speak about what we know with fortitude, with an exactness. But I love the way he says it. When we don't know, don't speak with exactness. Let us not speak positively when we do not know. As I mentor people around this church, or as I mentor those that are close with me, that's something that I've always stressed. It's okay to not know. We are not going to have every single answer. We are not going to have every single exact right thing to say. It is okay to not know. But when we do know, when we know exactly what we are supposed to do, or exactly what we have been called to do, or exactly what we are supposed to share, speak with authority. Speak with the authority of Jesus Christ. When we know what we know, speak it with authority. It tells us that they followed exactly what they were supposed to do, and they filled them up to the brims. The servants, under the direction of Jesus, were in a very unique place. This was a very unique moment for these servants who had just come to serve wine. They didn't know that they were coming to serve the God of the universe. They just knew that they were there to serve wine at a wedding. Jesus wanted the cooperation of men in this miracle. He could have just filled the pots himself, or he easily could have just created liquid into the pots and would have been fine. But he knew that if the servants shared in the work, they would also share in the blessings. The servants themselves did not do the miracle. Their efforts alone were completely insufficient. But because of their obedience to Jesus, they got to share in the joy of the miracle. There is so much in our lives that we think that if we just do enough, that this person will be saved. Or if we say enough, this person will be saved. If I act in a specific way, that this person will come to Jesus. But it's not about us. What it's about the God of the universe working through us. He doesn't need our perfection. He doesn't need us to do anything that we are not capable of doing. He needs us to do exactly what he has asked of us. So if he's put you in a place of work, or if he's put you in your home, or if he's put you in a relationship, wherever he's put you, he doesn't need your perfection. He needs your obedience. He needs you to do exactly what you have been called to do in that moment, wherever it may be. As we talked about this morning in our Sunday school class, there is nothing that we can do to earn salvation. There's nothing that we can do to earn perfection. But again, we can do so much through the power of Jesus Christ if we just follow in what he has called us to do. These servants were especially blessed because they obeyed without question. And to the fullest extent, they filled the jugs to the brim. They did exactly what they were called to do, and they did it with all the effort they possibly could. This means that the miracle would be fulfilled in the greatest measure possible. If they would have come in and filled the jugs halfway and they were lazy about it, there only would have been half the wine that would go on to satisfy these guests. When we follow and do exactly what we are called to do, the blessings just become more and more and more. And sometimes those blessings aren't even for us. Sometimes those blessings are for others that are in our life just because we are doing what we are called to do. We continue on, verse 8. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. And when the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. Again, this is such an amazing detail that John includes in this passage. He tells us the historical context of what typically happens. He tells us the fact that not only did Jesus create wine out of water, but he created the greatest wine to ever have existed. The way that the master of the festival comes up and says that everyone serves the good wine first. They're sneaky. They serve the good wine. Everybody celebrates and has fun. And as they start to lose focus, now here comes the bad wine. But you haven't done this. You've kept the good wine until now. It's one of those deals where the historical context matters, where to know exactly what has happened previously matters, because they were so used to this being common practice. They were so used to this being the norm in their society that now this has gone above and beyond. Not only did Jesus provide, but he provided greatly and above expectation. It continues on to tell us, verse 11, this, the first sign of Jesus, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory. And his disciples believed in him. It doesn't tell us that the servants believed in him, or that those within the party now believed in him, or anybody else. It tells us that this is the moment that those he had called to him truly believed in what he was doing. They understood, they agreed, they might have believed in their heads that this was the Messiah based on everything that they had told him, but now, here was the true belief. They watched this happen with their own eyes. John watched this happen with his own eyes. Miracles that attest to Jesus' identity as Messiah and Son of God and lead unbelievers to faith. That is something that we can see throughout history, is that we share exactly what Jesus has done for others. We can read stories from in Scripture, or we can tell stories that have happened in our lives, or stories that have happened in other lives, and that is what leads unbelievers to faith. But John specifies that after this sign, his disciples believed in him. Those who he had already called to himself now believed. They had walked with him. They had been with him for these last several days. He had shared with them some of the most intimate details of their own lives. But this is what got them on board. Was Jesus turning this water into wine and saving these people from humiliation. And then it tells us that after this, verse 12, after this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there for a few days. This wraps up our story and continues and finishes out our week and into the next week. But all of this happened for a very specific reason. The first reason that this happened, and the first thing that I wanted to take away from this, is that Jesus fulfills needs. In this moment, in this context, again, it would have been so horrible of a situation for them to have ran out of wine. This was a need of this family. For them to be able to continue in their social construct of the time, they needed a miracle. And Jesus did just that. When we place our faith in Jesus, when we, like Mary, we step in and we say, we know you can do this, Jesus will fulfill those needs. He might not fulfill them in the way that we think that he should fulfill them, and he might not answer prayers in the way that we think that he should answer prayers. But again, as we talked about in Sunday school this morning, if God answered every single prayer that I have ever prayed to him, my life would be a disaster. But any need that I've ever had, he has fulfilled. Anything that has ever been a struggle of need in my life, he has fulfilled. Because of who he is, because of what he can do, because he is the God of the universe, Jesus can fulfill each and every need that we have in our life. All we have to do is ask. The second thing that I want us to take from this is that Jesus removes reproach. Again, they were in this moment where this would have caused much reproach in this life of this family. It would have caused so many issues for this family. One theologian even says that in a celebration like this, it could have become it could have been taken to a judge if they felt like they were cheated out of the party that they were promised. There could have been legal ramifications if this would not have been done. That's how seriously they took these events, was the fact that it could cause legal issues for the family. But Jesus being there, he removed that reproach from them. He removed this burden from this family, just like he does for us. Because our sin, our lives, the things that we carry in ourselves can cause so much weight in our lives, can cause so much pain, so much anxiety, so much hurt. But when we give them to Jesus, he removes those things from us. He takes those away from us. He allows for us to live in peace in him. One verse that we covered this morning in our Sunday school tells us that whenever we give it over to him, it is wiped away forever. When I give my sin, when I give my struggles, when I give my hurts and habits, whatever it is, when I give these things to the God of the universe, he removes them from me forever. He doesn't hold them against me. People of this world might. You might still hold sin against somebody. You might still hold sin against me. You might still hold sin against yourself. But the God of the universe doesn't hold it against you. He removes it from you and throws it as far as the east is from the west, it says. And the last thing, Jesus moves as led by the Father. And the reason that I bring this up is because we look here and we see, again, in the context of the first few verses, that his mother comes and asks him to do this. And he tells her, "This is not, my time has not yet come, my hour has not yet come." And she steps out in faith and tells the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." It wasn't done just because she told him to or she asked him to. It was done so because Jesus himself was led by the Father. And we know this and we can understand this because Jesus would tell us this multiple times throughout this book. And we will see it time and time again throughout the book of John, but specifically in John 5, verse 19, he tells us, "So Jesus said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise.'" When Mary steps up and says they have no wine, he doesn't do it because she told him to. He did it because the Father told him to. But that didn't stop Mary from coming to him and asking him. When we come to the Father, we have to know and understand that everything that we bring to him isn't just going to happen because we said. But it is going to happen if and when the Father says, because of who he is. It will happen for his honor and for his glory. This moment didn't happen just because Mary asked. This moment happened because God wanted to show the disciples exactly what he was capable of. He wanted to show exactly what he was capable of by doing this miracle that didn't even make sense. To create fermented wine, to create this complete wine out of nothing, out of just water, was crazy. But it took something like this to get the disciples to go, he is exactly who he said he is. But this happened because Jesus was able to move because the Father led him to move. So as we take this with us today, and as we carry this with us today, I want us to realize these things, that when we give our lives to Jesus, that he will fulfill needs, but when we come to him, he is not going to give us each and every exact thing that we ask for. Because again, that would be a disaster. The Lord is going to move when he moves because of how he wants to move. But that shouldn't stop us from coming and presenting those needs to him. That shouldn't stop us from coming to him and laying down everything that we are asking of him at his feet. Again, Mary came to him and asked for him to do this thing, and it had no real meaning for her. This would have affected Mary none that we know of. This wasn't her wedding. This wasn't anything that she was truly involved in. It just tells her she was invited. So there would have been no effect for her, but anyway, she still brought it to Jesus. She still brought it to him so that it could benefit others. How often is what we are bringing to Jesus a benefit for others? A quote that I heard many years ago was, if the Father were to answer every prayer you have ever prayed, would anybody else be affected but yourself? And here we see that exactly playing out. When Jesus' mother brings it to him, it has no effect on her. When we come to the Father in faith, he will do with that exactly what he will do with it. But it shouldn't stop us from coming to him with every need that we have, every hurt that we have, every issue that we have, because he has the power to do it.